one.
Yeah.
For SQL injection, let's go with simple thing. Let's go with simple test SQL website, and let's go with simple definitions first. Then we go with the attacks for your SQL injection. So
SQL
before
injection.
starting with, yes,
Sir, this one it's the same called hijacking, like this hijacking. I don't know this.
uh, SQL injection is different than your hijacking. Your hijacking part will be covered under like any kind of hacking. Like
Yeah.
when you simply compromise a device, that was also known as hijacking.
Okay.
Compromising any device is also known as hijacking because you take control over that particular device. That was
Yeah.
also known as hijacking.
Yeah.
That's like you simply relate this one with a simple like bus hijacking part or plane hijacking part. That was same thing.
Yeah.
You are just trying to take control over a particular device. That was also known as hijacking.
Hmm.
Right? So you can hijack your servers, you can hijack your devices through multiple things were there. And SQL injection is one of them. But generally with SQL injection, we were focused on extracting some data from your database. With SQL injection, we generally extract some data from your database, or you can even compromise the complete web server as well through SQL injection.
Yeah.
Right? So all you have to do is just upload your SQL query to compromise your device, and that's all. You just have to upload some data to your database. So you can just call that data later, and if the data contains some kind of simple script for reverse connection, right? That data will be processed by your web server, and you will get your reverse connection. But again, with the SQL injection, we were simply focused on controlling our database on the server side, right? We will try up these things on our live website, like your simple test PHP. But before that part, let's understand what is SQL. There will be different types of SQL injection. So if I go with simple definition for the SQL part, SQL was just a language like your simple C, C++, Java, and there are different languages. SQL was just a language and nothing else. But
Yes.
specifically, this SQL was used to manage or to control your
Structure
database.
query, structure query language. Yeah.
Structured query language, exactly.
Yeah. I take it in the university. I remember.
Yeah.
But it's not too much. Yeah, it's a small thing. It was before and the Sun Solaris machines, if you remember.
Yes.
Yeah.
So SQL was generally used to manage your databases.
Hmm.
This was just a language. We have different kind of servers you can use. Like MySQL is one of them. PostgreSQL is one of them. We have different kind of SQL servers.
Yeah.
But the language which works on those servers was your SQL. Right now,
Yeah.
in case of SQL injection, if you go with injection here, let's go with SQL injection. I go with injection. If your user was able to execute his customized command, if your user was able to perform any operation on the database without proper permission, that was known as your SQL injection. When your user was able to perform some SQL commands on the database, this was known as your SQL injection. It means user is your user don't was attacker. Attacker was able
Add or
to
drag.
inject some SQL query to the server, right? And if your server process that query and give him the response, that was known as your SQL injection. But your attacker simply inject your SQL query to be processed by the server and get the response from the web server, get the results from the web server. Simple. But
Yes.
he is simply injecting some SQL queries. This was your main part for your SQL injection, right?
Yes.
Inject some SQL queries. Now, other than this, let's go with simple basic types of SQL injection. If I go with the basic type for SQL injection, we have three main types of SQL injection. Let's go with the main types of SQL injection. If I go with the main types, if your first type was known as your error based SQL injection, we call it error based SQL injection, in which
Yes.
you're mainly focused on generating an error. You were
Hmm.
purely focused on generating an error just
Hmm.
to verify that on the back end, what kind of server, what kind of SQL
Hmm.
server they were running.
Oh, good, good, very good.
Because if you are not handling your errors properly, your errors can reveal sensitive information like your SQL
Hmm.
queries, your database name, your password. As we
Yeah.
seen yesterday in the last session, I have shown you the proper errors
Yes.
for the
Yes.
SQL part.
Yes. You're
Right?
right. Put it in the username. Put it some of the command like this, like HTML page. You're right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So your errors can reveal your sensitive information easily. Right? So in this kind of SQL injection, we would purely focus on generating error so that we can analyze the error and we can extract some relevant information from that error. This
Hmm.
was your error-based SQL injection. Right? After this, the second type of error, the second type of SQL-based injection was we call it out-of-band SQL injection. In case of out-of-band SQL injection, we have three different types for the out-of-band. This was the parent category. We have three different subcategories for the out-of-band. The first one was known as your Boolean-based, or you can also call it as time-based SQL injection. In case of time-based, let's say, like when you send a request to the web server, your server will simply process your request, and directly give you the response, right?
Hmm.
But in case of time-based SQL injection, you simply set a delay with this kind of function like sleep is one of them. You simply set a delay like I want my response to be sent after 10 seconds, like after 20 seconds, right? And
Yeah.
if these kind of function were processed by your SQL server, then your server will wait for 20 seconds and then send you the response, right? Just to verify. Your
Yeah.
out-of-band SQL injections were focused on verifying that you were able to execute your command or not.
Hmm.
With error-based, we simply verify that on the back end your SQL server was running or not, and what type
Yeah.
of SQL server you are using. Right? After
Yeah.
checking these things, we simply check that we were able to execute our commands or not. To check that part, we move toward our out-of-band SQL injection. And in out-of-band, we have different techniques through which you can check that your queries were executable or not, right? And the first one was your time-based SQL injection, in which you simply set a delay for like 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 3 seconds, 20 seconds, or like 50 seconds as well to verify, just to verify that you were able to execute the command or not. For that part, we simply go with our time-based SQL injection, in which you simply set a delay for your response, right? Other than this time-based, we have one more. We generally call it as Boolean-based SQL injection. In case of Boolean-based SQL injection, let's say like you have a basic query, like you are simple. If I go with simple query here, let's go with simple one as like SQL. I'm going simple SQL query.
Sir, a small question if you don't mind.
Yes, sure.
I am not too much in the SQL queries. This is will be a issue or a problem for me as a hacker.
Uh, this could be a problem, but you don't have to be worried. We will simply go with the basic structure for the SQL and then we go with the attacks. Don't worry.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Don't worry. So if I go with the structure, let's go with simple like SQL. Uh, let's go with on W3 schools. And you can just test out your
Good. Very
skills
good.
for this W3 school. You can just learn your SQL from here,
MashaAllah,
right?
tabarakallah.
And you can just take some quiz. You can just try your commands by yourself. And let's go with the basic insert into command and let's give it a try.
Yeah.
So we have option for try yourself. So if I go with the simplest command, the simplest command for your SQL was like if I'm zoom in here, the most simplest command for SQL was we use simple select keyword to extract data from the database.
Yeah.
We use the select keyword to extract data from your database. Then you have to enter the column name, right? Then you
Mm.
have to enter the column name. After column name, we generally use the keyword from, like from where you want to get the data, right? Then we simply enter our table name. That I want to data from this particular table here. If I simply replace this value, let's say I have a column as like customer. Let's say I have a column with the name.
Mm.
In a particular table, I have a column with the heading as name. Right?
Okay.
The name of the column was simple name, or you can also call it as username. Let's go with user name.
Yeah, yeah,
This is
better.
my column name, right?
Yeah.
And let's say we have a table name as like users. This was my table name. So this particular query will simply retrieve my username from my particular table users. This is the basic
Yeah,
query out there. Simple.
yeah.
But in this particular W3 schools, we have a different table with the name customer name,
Mm.
right? And I'm simply going with asterisk as a wildcard character. As a wildcard character, I go with simply asterisk. It means we will simply extract all the data in our table. We simply fetch the data for all the columns at the same time. For that, we use this asterisk here as a
Mm.
wildcard character. I'm going to simply execute the command. Maybe I'm wrong with the spellings here for the table name somewhere. Maybe I forgot the table name. Let's go back and let's verify our. We have a table name with the customers. Just copy this name here and let's change this one. Yeah, this was your table name. If I simply execute this query, you can see we got some data here, right?
From where he bring this one?
This was a simple testing platform on the backend on the
Ah,
website.
yeah, 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 yeah. So
On the back,
this customers is a trial table, يعني from his side, and he created already, يعني like this, right?
yes, this was just a trial table,
So
but we can try.
this all that's mean you have this all of these columns. So this
Yes,
customer table have all of these columns. Customer ID, customer
exactly,
name. Okay. I know يعني little bit يعني you know because I remember in my university a little bit the key something called the key private key something like this. It's called no not private key. It's called
the
formal
primary
key,
key.
foreign key, primary key. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember
Yeah,
something like this. Yes, yes, good.
not a problem. You can just go through these W3 schools and you can just try your queries here.
Yes,
You don't
yes,
have to be expert, but you should know the basic of SQL.
yeah, yeah.
To try your SQL commands, you should know the basic for the SQL part,
Yes, yes, yeah.
right? So if I go to simple query, we got these results here, right? So it means my table name was your customers and your using your star for your wildcard character, right? If you want to apply some filters, let's say I want to apply some condition, like for the
If
condition part, we generally use the keyword where.
yeah, well,
For the condition, we use the keyword where. Right? I will simply apply the condition that my customer ID,
mm,
just get the data, right, from customers where your customer ID equals to, let's say, 50,
mm,
right? And if I simply execute this query, it will only retrieve the data for the customer ID equals to 50,
mm,
right?
yeah, yeah,
And
yes,
let's say if I simply apply one more filter with this simple customer ID, if I apply one more filter, let's say I'm going with the country. Country was Belgium, right? Let's say
yeah,
if I want to add one more filter with this same command, with a country with a simple customer ID, if I want to add one more filter, you can use two operators. First one was your or operator, and second one was your and operator,
and
right? In case of or operator, or works with a single true condition. Like let's say if we simply add one more condition here, like
our country, yes,
country equals to, just place your country name here. Like only fetch the data
yeah,
if my customer ID is 50 or my country was Belgium.
Belgium, mm,
Only then fetch the data, right?
yeah,
And if I simply execute the query, we got two results.
yeah,
We got two results. But for because for this particular customer
mm.
ID is 50, my first condition is true. But for the
If he put and he will give you only one column because this condition happen in the both in one row. Yes,
exactly,
yeah,
if I simply replace the or with the and,
yeah,
then we only got the single value
yes,
because this will check for both the conditions to be
yeah.
true.
Should be achieved both in condition. Yes.
Exactly.
Mm.
So these kind of queries were simply used by your developers to check
MashaAllah.
whether your username or password was correct or not. If I simply go here and
Mm,
simply go with test PHP, let's say, and let's give it a try for like profile. Here we simply pass our username and password,
mm,
right? Then my browser will simply send a request to the web server, and your web server will simply compare your username and password in the database with help of these kind of keywords like where username equals to your entered data and your password equals to your entered data, right? For this kind of fields, your query will looks like this one. If I go with simple, let's go with select like start from, let's go with the table name as user, right? Where like I'm going with simple uh, column name as like uname equals to, let's say here we simply collect some input from the user,
mm,
right? And for the input, let's say I have two different variable here. My first common variable, I'm going with name as like user name equals to. You can simply
mm.
collect the input from this from the queries, and you will simply store your input in this particular username variable, right? Let's say we have one more variable with our password. We have two variables to store your username as well as your password, right? In the table, we have a column with the name uname, right? And we will simply check your
Yeah.
user input with the help of query. We will simply write the command like select star from users where uname equals to.
Sir,
We simply put
a
the
small
value yes,
question, a small question if you
yes
don't
again.
mind. If I put this you name, he will accept this column of the username, or I have to put username. You are put your name, no problem.
No problem. Let's say in my table we have a column with the name uname. This is my column name. This
Hmm.
was my column name,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
Okay,
And
yeah,
this was the variable which was used to store your
yeah,
user input.
yes,
Your user entered field like simple. When your user enter your username,
yes,
right? That value will be stored here.
mm,
That value will be stored in this particular variable user. Let's say if
yes.
I simply enter my username as admin,
Mm, mm,
right? And my password as like PAWSWD. Simple. Let's go with admin and let's go with something like Google as my password,
mm,
right? So when you simply execute the query, let me just write down this query first. Then we have the PAWSWORD. Let's go with PAWS. We have a column name with the name PAWS password. For the password, we have a column name in the table as pass PAWS, right? And we simply place the user inputs at this location, right? And we post this one as like this dollar. Let's go with password, and your query will look like this one, right? For normal case. But when you add your user inputs there, if I simply place your inputs, these are your user input. Let me just
mm.
color them as green, right? So for your user input, your query will look like this one, like select star from users where uname equals to. In single quotes, we'll put your username as admin. This was your user name, right? After username, again, go with the black color and let's go with semicolon and then go with and operator, then go with password equals to. Again, in single
Google,
quotes, we'll simply place our password as Google.
Google, yeah.
For that, again, use the green color. Let's go with Google, right? After entering these username and password in your query will look like this one, right? These are just the variables which are used to
Mm,
store your user inputs.
mm.
These are just variables, right? And these were my column name
Same,
in
yeah.
my
Column name,
database,
yeah,
right? So
yes.
being an attacker, what you can do, right? If you want to bypass this kind of authentication, what you can do, being an attacker in the SQL,
Mm,
if you remember, we have two operators which we can use. First one was your AND operator, and second one was your OR operator, right?
yeah.
If you don't have any check, if you don't have any check for your inputs, like you can input anything, if you are able to input anything
Yeah.
and you have not implemented any kind of check,
Mm.
right? Like you can include some special character, you can use any symbol for your username and password, and you don't have any check. In that case, your attacker can add this kind of tricks. If I just go back, let's just uh,
Select.
take it back. I'm going with the next line here. Just give it a space. Now it's better. Okay. And let's scroll a little bit down
Yeah.
and then write your malicious query here, right? I'm going with hashtag malicious user inputs, right? So let's say you have two variables again. First one is your username, which was used to store your inputs again for the user side. Then we have the password, which was used to again the password from the username, from
Mm.
the user. We have two variables to store your username and password. Then we have
Mm.
our SQL query. If I go with simple SQL
Query.
query, and your
Mm.
query will look like this one. Again, query
Mm.
would be same, like select star from users where username equals to this and that.
Yeah.
Let's copy this one from here. Let's copy this and we will simply drag and drop this one here. This would be your normal query.
Mm.
But let's say if your user adds some inputs like these things. Let's say for password, he simply add admin. Let's just go with the red here because these were malicious
Yeah.
inputs. I'm going with red as admin. He will simply add a single quote. Then he will simply give it a space and then go with or. Again, give it a single quote. Then go with one. Then again, put the one into single quote so that he can compare the one as a string. Just to treat this number one as string, he will simply put that one into single quotes, right? And then he will use the equal symbol, and then he will again use the quote, and then he will use the one. I will explain why he used this one here. I will again explain you. But again, just keep this in mind,
Yeah.
right? That this was your malicious input from your
Mm.
admin, from your simple attacker, you can say,
Yeah.
right? So if I simply place these things in my query, your query will look like this one. Like select, let's go with a black color for your normal query. Like select star from users where uname equals to in single quotes we will put our variable names. So your first username was admin single quote or blah blah blah. Let's put this query here.
Yeah.
Admin, right? Then we have single quote, then we have space, then we have or, then we have space, then again we have quote one, quote equals to quote one. This was just simple malicious input from the
Mm.
user side. So the username, right? After username, what we have? The or the end condition here. And after end, again, we have the password comparison. For the
Mm.
password, just go with the PASS equals to. Just go with the single quotes again, and we will simply put the user input in between these single quotes.
Yeah.
So let's give it
So,
again.
fair. So this one,
Yes,
this what you are right, admin or one equal one. This is a malicious command, right?
this is the malicious user input. You
Okay.
simply add this thing as your username
This one
here.
to retain error.
Not to retain the error, just to bypass this authentication.
Okay, 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 okay.
Just to bypass this authentication, we
Yeah,
add this kind of queries.
yeah.
I will explain you how you're able to bypass.
Yes,
I will
yes, yes, yes.
explain you.
Take care, take care.
Just give me 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So again, just add the same malicious input in place of your password variable here. Just go with your malicious input as admin. Let's just go with a black. Let's go with the red color here. Just go with admin. Again, single quote. Give it a space. Your or again quote one quote, then equal and quote one. Right. So this was your query after your malicious inputs. Now,
Oh, oh,
if your system execute this query, right,
hmm.
it will simply execute this query only. We will only execute this query like select star from user when this particular conditions are true. Like username equals to admin.
Hmm.
This particular code starts here for your string value. If you are using a single quote, you will start your strings from here and you will and your string will end here. You have added this string
Mm.
intentionally to complete the string. After completing the string, you simply you simply inject the OR operator there, and then inject one more string values as one,
Mhm.
and then compare the string value one with the string value one. And we all know one is universally equals to one. This is the universal true condition, right? So
Yeah.
when your simple SQL server will process your query, let's say it will simply compare that your username is equals to admin or not. We'll
Uh,
simply compare that part, and when he compare, let's say he got false from here. From here, he got the false. And let's just add this false as our red color because this is the false condition.
mm.
After false, we have the OR operator here, right? And let's
Uh,
just place the OR operator exactly like this one here with the black color. For your operator, I'm using black colors here. After OR operator, what we have is our second condition for your OR operator. Right? Second condition was 1 is equals to 1 or not. And we all know 1 is always equals to 1. This is
mm.
universally true, right? Then we will return true from here.
Mm.
And let's highlight this true as green because this is the true condition. After this part, after your true condition, let's give it some space here. We have our AND operator. Let's just simply place your AND here. And after AND, what we have is your password comparison. Just compare your password equals to admin. Let's say we got false from here.
Mm.
We got the false from here, right? Then again, we have the OR operator. Just place your OR operator again as OR. Here we have your OR operator. After OR, what we have is again one more condition with 1 is equals to 1. Let's say from here, what we got is
Mm.
true, right? After comparing your these query, your system have to calculate these values, right? Now, when your the simple SQL server will compare these values first. Like first one, we have to compare this OR operator.
Mm.
We have to compute this OR operator, and we know for OR, one of the conditions needs to be true. Only one condition needs to be true, right? And here we have one false and one true, right? So
Mm.
from this whole calculation here, what your server will return? Your server will simply return as true because we have a true condition here. And in between these false and true, we have the basic OR operator,
Yeah.
right? The
Mm.
same thing will be repeated here for your what happened. The same thing
Yes.
will be repeated for this
False.
condition as well, right?
False.
Not false, true.
Okay. And
Because we have one true condition. If you remember this
yeah.
one,
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yes. It's true.
like if I simply replace this and with the or,
It will give you
it
what?
will
Yes.
return
Yes. Yes. True. Yeah.
it will return two conditions because
Yeah.
for my first result, my
Yes.
first condition is true. But for the second result, my second condition is true. It means
Yes.
only one condition needs to be true,
You're
right?
right. You're right.
And same thing was here. One
Mm.
condition was true here, then it will simply give
Yes.
you the true
Mm.
condition, true results.
Yes.
Right? So after calculating these results, then we have to calculate this one, right? On the left hand side, we have the true, and on the right hand side, we also have the true. If you simply use or AND operator here, AND operator wants both the conditions to be true. Like your customer ID should be 50. Your customer ID needs to be 50, and your country should be Belgium. Only then you will got your results. If your customer ID is 50 and your country is Belgium, only then you will got your results. Otherwise, you will not get your results
Yeah.
because AND operator work with two true conditions and wants both the conditions to be true. Only then he will return as true. Otherwise, you will return as false. Simple. And in this situation, we have true on the left hand side and we have true on the right hand side, right? And in between these two, we have your AND operator. So the output for this one will be a true condition because you have true on the both sides. So we will go true at the end, and you will
Yeah.
able to crack the authentication without identifying your correct username and correct password. You
No.
can input anything, but just by injecting these values, just by injecting this OR operator through
Mm.
your input fields, and with the true condition, you are able to bypass your authentication.
Mm.
Right? This
Crazy.
kind of SQL injection, which was used to which was used to crack your authentication, was known as authentication based SQL injection, or we also call them auth based SQL injection. We have one more name for this part. We also call it as tautology. Tautology SQL injection.
This is software or
In
what?
this is not the software. This is the proper term. A
Mm.
kind of SQL injection. This is
Mm.
a type of SQL injection in which we simply crack the authentication. We simply bypass the username and password checks. Like
Yes.
if you simply add these things here, you simply add admin this one, this field
Mm.
here, or like the website like this one here. Let's say if I go with username and password, let's go with the live websites as like I think this one still works. Yo, yeah, I'm not sure this one is still existing or not. Let's give it a try. Just search here for like admin panel slash admin. We have the admin panel page here. Let's give it a try for like admin, and let's go with admin. They're still using the default credentials, right? But
Mm.
again, you can do one more thing. You can just crack the authentication with these words like admin code or code this thing. You can also try. But if I go with one more website
Based.
like simple colleges, like
Mm.
simple colleges, simple hospitals, simple
Oh.
universities kind of things were more vulnerable to these kind of SQL attacks. You can try these values like admin, single quote or double quote. Then we have the or operator here. Then give it a space and then pass your these kind of true conditions.
So there's a space between the comma and the or.
Yes, this was a space between your command
Mm. Mm. Mm.
because in between the keywords, like if I go back here, in between the keywords we have to specify a space.
Mm.
You have to
Yeah.
give a space between your operators, between your
Yeah. Yeah.
keywords,
Mm.
right? So
Right.
this kind of injections were known as a tautology SQL injection, or we can also call them as auth-based SQL injection, which was used to crack your authentication,
Yeah.
right? And this was your basic query for your authentication, like select star from users, where username equals to user input and your password equals to user input again.
Sir, excuse me. What this
Yes.
is dollar for? What this is dollar?
Sorry, what is
The S dollar before the username. You are put
this
yeah in the
dollar was
before password and username. You put is dollar for what?
dollar was generally used to specify that I'm placing a variable value here.
Ah,
That I will use the variable value here. That my admin, this particular user input admin, was stored in this variable name as username. This is just my variable name here, right?
yeah.
And I will use the value which was stored in
Okay,
this
the value.
variable
Yeah,
here,
any value. Yes, yes.
any value.
Excellent. I understood now.
Yeah,
If you put without is dollar, that mean no. Just use this username, his name, username. Yeah, like this.
yes, exactly.
Exactly. Very. Now I understood. Allah barak Allah. Thank you so much. Very nice. Yes. Good.
All
Good.
right then.
Good. Yes.
So other than this, let me just increase this one. Let's extend this one, and let's take this down. Okay. Now let's zoom in again,
أيوه.
and now we can work here. So if I go with simple Boolean based SQL injection, right? You are simply injecting a condition. Like if I go with here, let's say go back to your page. Let's go with this one. Let's go with the first one. And let's say here we have a particular query here. Like we have a domain testphp.vulnerweb.com slash
Yes.
listproduct.php. And here we have a condition cat
Cat.
equals to one, right? Cat is my table name, and
Yeah.
this was my particular parameter, cat equals to 1. So
Oops.
what you can do to generate an error, you can simply insert a single quote here to generate the error generate. The simplest method to generate an error, simply add a
Very nice.
single colon,
Yes,
right?
very nice.
And you can also use some double quotes as well to generate
Mm.
the errors. The simplest
Or,
method.
or, or I can put anything, anything.
Yes, you can go with anything like simple this that.
Yeah.
Again, you can generate the error through these things, right? Other than this, let's say to check whether I can perform the injection or not, you can simply go with the operator. Let's say if I simply apply a condition here, just go with a
Oh,
Boolean based injection, I simply apply a condition like cat equals to 1 and 1 equals to 2,
yeah.
right? When I
Mm.
simply add this one, when I simply send this query like cat equals to 1 and operator was there, and we have a condition like 1 equals to true, this will return the true, but this will return the false, and we have the
False.
AND operator here.
Yeah.
Then in that case, my server will return no
False.
results.
Mm.
My server will not return any results. But if I simply replace this 2
Make
to
it one.
1,
One.
then we got the results.
Yeah.
It means we were able to inject our SQL queries to your URL.
Yeah.
I'm simply replacing the 1 at the end with that say 10. 1 is equals to 10 and press enter. We got nothing here. Because my server is checking my inputs here,
No.
right?
Yeah.
And if I simply place 1 equals to 1 here, then we got the results. So all you
Yeah.
have to do is just analyze the behavior for that particular website. If you feel any difference in the result, then you can see, then you can verify that this kind of injection was possible. Your server was accepting results. Your server was accepting queries from the user,
Mm.
and you can inject your own queries just to check that you are able to perform the injection or not. We add this kind of queries here, right?
Sir,
Yes,
can you give just 30 seconds or 1 minute as
yes,
a
sure, not
small
a
break?
problem,
With
not a
my
problem, not a
wash,
problem.
I like this information, but just let me just fill my water. Yeah,
Yes,
less
sure,
than 1 minute, like 30 seconds maximum, like
not
this.
a problem.
Yeah,
All right. So let's continue with our simple next
yeah.
type of SQL injection. That was your
Uh,
after Boolean. We have one more kind of SQL injection for your
yeah,
out of band SQL injection. That was
yeah.
your we call it. Just give me a second because we were wrong here. This was the subcategory and the main type of SQL injection. We call it blind based SQL injection. The main name was your blind
One.
based SQL injection. Under this blind based SQL injection, we have these three as your time based, your boolean based, and your out of band. But the main thing was your blind based SQL
Injection.
injection. The main name was your blind based SQL injection, we call it, right?
Yeah.
And the third category for your blind based was known as your out of band SQL
Okay.
injection. Here we
Okay.
have these three types of blind based SQL injection,
Yeah.
where we have your
Mm.
out of band SQL injection, right? In which, if I go
Yeah.
with out of band, in case
Yeah.
of out of band,
Yes. Yes.
your result, your responses, you will not see any kind of difference on your web page. No, your
Yeah.
results, your difference will be sent to another domain. Let's say you own a domain with the name like ABCD, right? You are
Mm.
testing this particular website, testphp.vulnerweb.com. You are testing this website, right? In case of out of band SQL injection, your results will be sent to another domain like ABC or xyz.com, abc.com, right? Your results will be sent to the web server for your abc.com, for your
Mm.
xyz.com, for your blah blah blah.com,
Mm.
right? Your
Yes.
results will be displayed, your results will be sent to the another server. And these kind of injections were known as your out of band SQL injection, in which your
Mm.
results will be sent to the another domain, to another server, you can say,
Mm.
right? Other than this out of band SQL injection, We have the third type of SQL injection. We call it as union based SQL injection. Right? In case of union based SQL injection, let's say if I simply go back there and let's say like I'm simply clearing these filters here.
Mm.
Right? I will simply execute this simple query like
Yeah.
customer ID equals to 50 or 1 equals to 1. This is a true condition. I know this thing. So
Mm.
we got all the results, right?
Mm.
So in case, let's say I want to add one more value. Let's say in this simple query, like let's remove this one. Let's say I don't want to get all the results for this particular customer ID as 50. I just want to fetch the city name. Let's say I just want to fetch the customer name, right? I will simply replace that asterisk with my column name and simply execute the command. Then we only get the customer name, right?
Mm.
This is my single query. This is my single query. Even if you simply go with the asterisk here and then you execute the command, even then this was a single query because we only have a single select keyword here, right? But in case if you want to merge two different queries with each other, if you want to execute two different queries in a single line, we generally use the union keyword. Union
Union.
keyword was used to merge, to join two different queries with each other. We use the union keyword. Let's say after union, you can go and so you can just write your second query as select star from. Let's go with star. Let's go with star. Let's go with star from customers where customer ID equals let's say 25 and press enter. Your first query was used to get everything from the customers where your customer ID is 15 and we
Yeah.
got this result, right? But this
Mm.
time I simply add one more query with my union keyword with this one, like select everything from customer where your
Yeah.
customer ID is 35. And if I execute this one, we will got two results. Your first result for your customer ID is 25 was from this query, and your result for customer ID is 50 is from this query.
So yeah, union, it's like to add to select command.
You can say
Yeah.
we simply merge two different
Yeah.
queries with each
Merge,
other.
merge, merge. Okay.
To join two different
Join.
commands, we
Yeah.
use
Yeah.
this union keyword here,
Yeah.
right? Now,
Mm.
if you go back here, you just go back here, we have the
Mm.
basic query like this one. So my basic query, let's
Mm.
just copy this one here, just copy this query from here, and let's take it to the bottom. I will simply add a separator, just add a separator, and after separator, just paste your values here. This was your normal query.
Mm.
It was written by
Exactly.
your
User where you. Yeah.
developer.
Oh, okay. Excellent.
Simple,
Then.
right? So if I
Mhm.
simply write these queries normally, we
Mm.
have simple inputs like this one. Like we have again two
Mm.
variables. First one is your username equals to this one's again get the username from the user,
And
and then it will collect the password from the user again.
yeah.
Here we have two different variables.
Yeah.
Let me just name them as variables to collect data from user, right? We have these two variable names. Now, after this part, this was my normal query, right? If I simply write it here again, but we don't have to write this one again here. Let's say we have some inputs like this one. If your user add this input, like simple, for the username, he simply add admin
And yeah.
in your username panel here, like where it is, just for your profile. Here, we simply add admin,
Yeah.
right? But in password, we add this kind of query, like simple union. They don't go with password because we can't see the query. Just place your admin word as password, and let's say in username you simply add union select star from users and leave it here. Then your this particular query will be saved in this particular user field. Let's highlight this one as red, and in password he entered as admin. In password he entered admin, and in like here in user field he entered this query union select star from users.
Yeah.
Normal.
Those things.
Let's say before this union, let's add a simple string as ABCD, right? And let's complete this string with a single quote and then give it a space. This was my user input
Hmm.
for your username. This was the input for your password. Now,
Hmm.
if I place these values in my query will look like this one. Select
Hmm.
star from
Users.
users where
Mhm.
we got our first
Username.
variable as uname
Username. Sorry.
equals to. We have a single quote
Variable.
here,
Yeah.
and your
Variable.
value will be placed in single quotes,
Yeah.
right? Let's add our query with like red color. Let's go with the red color here, and let's place your user input. First here we have ABCD, then again we have single quotes, then again we have a union select star
Yeah.
from
Password.
user,
User.
right?
Sorry.
And at the end of this line,
Yeah.
at the end of the query, he can simply use this kind of symbols like hyphen hyphen
Yeah. Yeah.
to comment out rest of the query.
Hmm.
To comment out rest of the query, let's say if I simply add the hyphen hyphen here, if I add hyphen hyphen here, my whole query here will be commented. Just give it a space here. But again, you can add the queries because you forgot the
Hmm.
semicolon.
Yeah.
Your whole query will be simple, commented. You can comment your SQL queries with this kind of operator like hyphen hyphen. But again, it completely depends on your web server, what web server you are using, right? So for in this case, you can use this kind of hyphen hyphen to comment out your query. Like, and if we add this particular string as username here, where is your SPHP? We add these things in the user field like ABCD colon space union select star from like users, and then he add this hyphen hyphen to comment out rest of the field, right? And if these values will be added to your database, if these values will be placed in your query will look like this one: users hyphen hyphen users
Hmm.
space hyphen hyphen, then we have password, then we have and operator, then we have password, and again with password we have single quotes again, and then we have our user input as admin, right? Just because when your server will process this request,
Yeah.
when your server will process this query, he
Yeah.
will simply check this where condition first. Your username equals to ABCD. Let's say he will return false.
Yeah.
From this query, select star from user where username equals to ABCD. He will return false, right? Then we have the
Yes.
then we have the union keyword here. He will simply join this query with this one, like union. Then we have a second query, like select star from users, right? Let's say he will select everything. We got the star from here. We got every data from this command, and then we have this hyphen hyphen.
Yeah.
It means these words, these keyword like simple, this hyphen, this and, this password, and this admin will be commented. These things will not be processed. This thing will not be checked by your just simple database server.
Yeah.
You will simply neglect. You will simply ignore these words because they were commented here, right? Our server or any kind of system never process the comments.
Yeah.
We simply ignore the comments, right? Same way, your web server, so your database server will also ignore these comment values, right? In this case, your username ABCD. will return the false. Username ABCD will return the false. But we have the union keyword, and again we have the query to select everything from the users, and we will got the results. We got every data from the users without even cracking the username and password.
Yeah.
We got the complete database, right,
Mhm.
with this kind of union queries, right?
Mm.
So if you are using the union keyword to merge or to join two different queries with each other, or to extract some data, or to modify some data, or to perform any kind of operation on the database, if you are using the union keyword, in that case we call it union based SQL injection. When you are using union keyword to merge or to join two different queries with each other, right? Same way like this one, where you inject this kind of queries through your input fields like here,
Yeah.
like
Yes. Sir.
union select star from users and comment out everything else. If you got the results, this was known as your union based SQL injection, right? If I go with simple example for union based, let's go with the categories again, let's go with the poster, and let's execute our query here, right?
Mm.
So before starting with union based, let's go with one more thing. You can also sort your data. If
Mm.
you want to sort your data, you can also sort. Let's say I want to sort my columns in ascending or descending order, right? I'm removing this where conditions. Just remove this one and execute the query. We got the results,
Yeah.
right? If you want to sort this, if you want to sort any column in ascending or descending order, you can go with the keyword as order
Oh.
by, right? And
Okay.
with the order by, you can place the column name. As let's say I want to sort my table according to this city name, right? So I will use the keyword order by to sort my table with the city
By
name here.
city. Yeah.
And if I execute the command, my table was sorted with my city names. We have A, then we have the B, then we have the C, D,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so on.
Very nice.
My table was sorted. Right? For the
Yeah.
sorting part, you can use your keyword order by,
Yeah.
and you can place your column name here. But with the column name, you can also place the column number. Let's say if I want to sort my column according to this postal code,
Mm.
right? This was my first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and
Yeah.
sixth column, right?
Yes.
Then I will simply replace this column name with my number as 6. And if I execute the command, my table was sorted according to
Just
this
column.
column
Yeah.
number 6
Yes.
postal code.
Nice.
Simple, right?
Very nice.
So what you can do, if you being a attacker, if you simply add 10 here, let's say we don't know how many columns were there in
Yes.
the table.
Yeah.
Let's say we don't know anything about the table, right? To identify how many columns were there, you can simply add this kind of order by keywords in your URL and add a random number. Let's say I'm going with 10,
So-
right? If I got an error for 10, it means
Hmm.
there are less than 10 columns, right? Then I can give it 9 here and go with the run. Again, we got the error.
Mm.
Then I can go with the 8 here.
So you can know it exactly.
We can know how many columns were there.
Yeah.
Again, we got the error for 8. And then we can start with 7 and we got some results.
Yeah. It's seven.
We got some result, but we don't get any error, right? We got error at 8, but we don't get error at 7. It means
Yeah.
in this particular table, we don't know table name, we don't know the database name, we don't know anything. The only thing we know is
That you
there
get
are
you.
7 columns
Yeah.
in the table because we
Yeah.
don't get error at 7.
Mm.
We got error at 8, but we don't get error at 7. The same
Yes.
thing you can try here. Let's say I don't know anything about the column or the database or nothing, I don't know. Then I can simply go with order by, let's say I'm going with 10. I got some results, I don't get error. Then I can increase this number, let's say 20.
Yeah.
Enter, we got the error,
Error. Yeah.
right? Let's decrease this one to 15 and execute. Again, we got the error. Let's try for 13. Again, we got the error. Let's try for 12. Again, we got the error. Let's try for 11. And we got some data.
So 11
Means there are 11 columns in the
columns.
database, but we
Yeah.
don't know table name. we don't know database name,
Yes.
right? In that case, now, after identifying the column names, what you can do? If you simply write some queries like this one, union select 1, comma 2, comma 3, comma 4, 5,
Five,
6,
six,
7, 8,
eight,
9,
nine, 10,
10, and 11,
11. That's all.
right? If you write this kind of queries and pass it to your server, the
Yeah.
server will simply display these numbers. Let's say if you want to check that this particular data, the shore, this particular name was stored in which column,
Yeah.
because this data was retrieved, this data was fetched from the table for sure. And if you want to check that this data was stored in which column, you can use this kind of commands like union select
Mm.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
And
And if you have more than 11 columns, you can increase the number. Let's say you have 50 columns, then you have to take this one to 50, 12, 13, and so on up to 50. You have to try this one, right? And when you execute this query, again we got some values, we don't get any error. But if you scroll down this time, we got some numbers here.
mm.
We got some numbers here. It means the value,
Mhm.
the data at seventh column was displayed at the top of the image,
6. Yeah.
right? The data in column number 2 was displayed here, like this one, blah blah blah, and this one, right? The data at column number 2 was displayed here on the right side of the picture. The data at ninth column was displayed as my painted by keyword here.
Yeah.
Simple. And now we know that we got the data on this particular web page. Only 3 column data was printed. My data was retrieved, but only from 3 columns. First one was your column number 2, then we have our column number 7, then we have column number 9,
Mm.
right? And rest of the data was not listed here, right? So now what you can do, if you want to execute any query, if you want to
Mm.
use some kind of query to retrieve some data to make some modification, you can inject your query at these locations. So you can analyze the response. Let's say if I at number 2, if I simply replace this number 2 here, I'm simply replacing number 2. And if I call my database here, let's go with database function. Well, to extract my database name, we simply use this function as database. When
Yeah.
you are focused on getting the database name. And if I simply execute this one, again, we got some results. And if you scroll down, we got our results for our database name. At the place of number 2 this time, we were able to
Mm.
execute our queries and my data was listed here. But
Okay.
if you execute the same thing, execute the same database name
Mm.
at any other location, let's say if I simply replace this one at number 3, right, and press enter, we got some values, but that data was not listed here.
Mm.
To extract the data and view it on this particular page, you have to place your query at a specific location. Only then you can see the data, right?
Yeah.
Because in this page,
Mm.
data was displayed from only these 3 columns, number 7, number 2, and number 9,
Yeah.
right? So after getting the database name, we have the database name now, and we know there are 11 columns in the database, in the particular table, but we don't know
Yes.
the table name, right? To
We
get the
know.
table name,
We know the
yes,
database name. Yeah.
we don't know the table name, right?
Yeah.
To get the table name, what you can do, you can simply get the table name from this information schema. In every SQL server, we have an information schema database which stores all the data for your table. Like what are the basic structure for your table? What kind of information was stored in which table? Right? What kind of values was stored in which database? How many columns were there?
Mm.
All this kind of basic structural information was stored in your information schema, including your keys as well, like your primary key and secondary keys, including your foreign keys as well. This kind of informational data was stored in your information schema, right? So what you can do, you can simply get your username from your information schema, right?
Mm.
So now we want to fetch the table names. Just go with your table underscore name. and we want to fetch the data. We want to fetch the table name from your information underscore schema dot tables, right? And if you execute this query, we got some errors. Let's just add the tables at the end. Something else was wrong, like at number 2, table underscore name, and everything was fine. From info spelling mistakes again, ION and enter, right? Spelling mistakes were there. So just write down this query like something this one. We want to fetch the table name. We want to fetch the data from the particular column as table name, right?
Yeah.
From my information schema dot tables.
Yeah.
We have in this particular database information schema, we have a table with the name tables, right? And from the tables, we have table with the name tables, right? And from the table, we want to fetch data from a particular column with the name table underscore name. And if you scroll down, you will got your results. We got all the table names here. Like artist was one of the table, art
Mm,
simple. Cards was one of the table, and we
mm,
have all these values here.
mm.
We have all these tables data stored in your information schema,
So,
right? This was data from all your databases, not only from AccuArt. This was the result from all your databases, right? But we
yeah.
got a list of tables here.
Yeah.
Let's say, like we want to get the data from this particular table as users, right? Let's
Yeah.
after getting the table name, let's say we want to identify the column name, right? To identify the column name, what you can do, you can simply change this table underscore name to column underscore name,
Yeah. Left one table. Column. Two.
right? And just change this table name as tables to columns.
Yeah.
Because again, in information schema database, we have a table with the name columns.
Column. Yeah.
Again, spelling mistake shows there,
Call. Call. UMN.
columns,
Yes. Yeah.
right? And if I
Column.
press enter, this will give me columns. But we want the columns from a specific table. We want columns from a specific table, right?
Yeah.
For that part, we will simply apply a condition as
Where
where table
table.
underscore name
Uh,
equals to your users that I want to get the
uh, it's dollar.
columns for this particular table
It should be.
users.
Okay. No need to put this dollar. Yeah.
We simply apply a condition here that only
Mm,
show me the columns where the table name is users.
users.
Otherwise, don't show me results, right? And if you press enter here, they got some results. Just scroll a little bit down and you got columns for a particular table users. Simple. You got all of your column names here, like CC, email, cards, address, and everything else was here.
This all of the
You get
columns.
these were the columns from your particular table users,
Yeah.
right? You got the column names. And now, if you go back to the W3 schools, you can now relate this one. When you want to extract the data, right? My basic simple structure was here, like select column name from your table name, right? And instead of your column name, you can also use this keyword as star as a wildcard character. But generally, we place our column names here and we place our table name here. And now we know the table name and we get a list of all the columns here. Means now
Yeah.
we can fetch the
And
data from the particular table and from a particular column as well, right?
yes.
Now,
Excellent. Excellent.
I'm going with a new tab, so we don't have to make these changes here.
Mm.
Just go with a new tab and just go with test PHP again with a, because I don't want to go back to this page. Let's do one thing. Let's just copy the name to some place for our future reference. So I'm just placing these names here. Let's take it to the left hand side, right hand side, and let's go here. As address was one of the column here. Then we have card as a column. Then we have CC as a column, email as a column, and after email, what we have? After email, we have name as a column, we have password as a column, we have phone as a column, and after phone, we have uname as a column. All right. So in my particular table users, we have all these columns. We have all these columns in my particular table. My table name was user, right? And in that table, we have all these columns. Now, after this, when you have the columns, what you can do, you can simply execute commands here. Just clean up this thing, just clean up your column names, or just clean up this one first, like from information schema dot columns where table name equals to this. Just clean up this thing and write your table name here. I want to fetch my data from users table. I want to fetch my data from this particular users table, right? And then name your column names here. Just replace
Mm,
this column underscore name with your particular column name. Let's say I want to fetch my data for all these column at the same time,
mm,
right? If you simply place a single column name here, like let's say I want my uh, phone here, and if I simply execute the command, we
yeah.
will got the result, and we got the phone number here at
Mm,
number two. But if you want to fetch data from multiple column at the same place,
mm,
right? Then we generally use this kind of keyword like group underscore concat, right? And in this particular function, we can call data from multiple columns at the same time, right? Let's say I want to fetch data for all these things.
mm,
I want to fetch data for like address, email, password, everything,
mm.
right? Let's just shrink this one and let's place our query here. Let me use magnifier.
Okay.
Oh, it's too much now. We have address, card, CC, email, name, pass. Okay, let's add this one by one.
Yeah.
So first of all, we have the
And
address,
yes, yeah.
then we have the password, then we have CC, then we have email, then we have name, then we have phone, then we have uname, then we have password, and what's left? Uname, pass, phone
Name,
name,
phone,
email, CC,
bus,
card was left.
CC.
We forgot CC was
See that?
listed
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
We forgot
yeah,
the card,
yeah.
and last was card.
Oh,
And then you can execute your
the
query
phone.
here.
Yeah,
Again, we got some results, right? Let's just go again. And if you scroll down here, you can see we got some results.
yeah,
At place of 2, we got some results. But the results were simply merged with each other.
yeah.
We can't
What
figure out
mean?
like
Yeah.
we can't figure out what was the simple username, what is the password, where is the name. I can't figure out this thing,
Oh
right?
my
For
goodness.
that part, you can simply add a delimiter here. Like let's say in between these column names, I will simply add one more field in my double quotes value. Between my double quotes, I will simply give some spaces, right? Like
Mm,
after value, after getting value from this address column, just give it space and then get the data from my password field. For that part, I'm using this space as a delimiter, right? I will separate the values from different columns with the this space,
mm.
right? And just add this value before every column name, right?
Yeah.
So you can separate the values from different column with some space. So just
Okay. Very good. Nice.
right. And if you simply execute the query, again we got the results. And if you scroll down this time, now you can see we got
Yeah.
the result. Like this was your first query. This was your first value.
Yeah.
That was the first thing. As your
Mm.
address, this was your address,
Uh,
JSVJB.
yeah.
Then we got your then we got the
Uh,
value from your next, what we
what's
call
the
it,
second maybe
column.
the name?
Then we got your third column, then we got your fourth column here, then we got fifth, then again sixth, seventh, and so on. Or you can do one more thing. Other than this, you can do one more thing. If I just zoom in again, let's just replace this space with some keywords like this one. You can add some delimiter like this one, right? And let's replace this value with my strings.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah.
Paste here. I'll simply separate my values with these
Yeah.
semicolons, sorry, colons here.
Yeah. Semicolon. Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
Just go with few more.
Yeah. You have to use your brain. Yes, your life. Yeah.
And now let's execute the query. Again, we got the results. And if I scroll down this time, you can see this was my first value, my first column. Then we got our second column. Then we got third. Then we got the fourth. And now my
Yeah.
data was properly
Clear.
separated with my this value, with my
Mm.
semicolons here, right? So you
Yeah.
can easily add this kind of delimiters and separate your data and extract your data from your
Mm.
database, right? So you can test your
Mm.
SQL database, SQL injection manually, like this one. Or if you
Yeah.
feel like that was difficult, you can just go back to your Kali Linux and you can use a tool like SQL Map was one of them. You
Yeah.
can use
For
SQL Map
why? For what this? For what?
to test the SQL injection.
Uh,
To test your SQL injection, you can use your SQL Map tool, right? These were simple options which were used to extract the data from your database. And the simplest method for your SQL injection with the SQL map was your --wizard, right? Just go with your SQL map and go with --wizard option, not this one. And with the wizard, all you have to do is just pass your URL. Let's say my URL was this one. So I go with the
yeah.
test PHP. Let's go with the category here. This
Mm.
was my general URL. Like
Yeah.
testphp.vulnerable.slash list product.php question mark cat equals to 1. I will
Yes.
simply copy this URL and pass this one to my SQL map, right? After URL, just press enter. If you want to pass your customized query, you can enter your query here. Otherwise,
Mm.
just leave it blank and just go with the difficulty level. You can just go with any level again. I'm going with level 3 as
Yeah.
hard,
Yeah.
right? Because I was not able to test your SQL injection manually. Then
Yeah.
you can go with the hard, you can go with medium, you can go with normal. Again, it's your choice. Then go with the 3 and press enter. Then the point is how much data you want to enumerate from your database, right? If you want to if you just want to test your
Yeah.
website, your target for SQL injection, then
Yeah.
you can go with basics.
All
If you
basic. Okay.
just
Yeah.
if you just want to test for the injection, like your website is vulnerable for injection or not, in that case you can go with the basics option,
Yeah.
right? If you
Select one.
just the default one, if you
Select one.
just want to extract the
Yeah.
basic structure for your tables from your
Yeah.
information schema database, then
Oh,
you can go with the intermediate level,
yes.
right? Third one was your all,
All.
in which you will simply get the table structure and you
Yeah.
will also get the table data.
Yeah.
If your website is vulnerable to SQL injection, it will also retrieve your data as well, right? Just go with the number 3. Let's go with number 2, then we go with number 3 as well. Let's go with number 2, and this will simply give you the structure for different tables. Like we have a table with the name featured, in which we have two different columns. First one was your feature underscore text, then we have pick underscore ID, and these two
Okay.
columns contain your text data. This
Okay.
picture ID contain your int data, your simple numbers were there,
Well,
right? And if you go with number 3, yes,
yeah. What mean
int
this for
means like
numbers? Yeah, entries.
for
Yeah.
numbers.
For numbers is
For
int. Yeah.
numeric values, we use int here. For
Integrity. Yes.
integer values,
Integer. Yes. Yes. Yes.
yeah. Let's say I'm going with number 3 to extract all the data from my database. Right? This time I'm going with number 3 as
Yeah. All.
enumeration.
All.
Let's go with all here at number 3 and press enter. This will give you structure as well as the data. We got the values here. Just wait for a few seconds and it will give you results out there. So just wait for a second. You got some values here. Again, we got some values, and you have to zoom out here just to see the proper structure for the table. Like this one, you can see we have proper tables here. Like for this particular table, column underscore extension.
Yeah.
In this table, we have 765 entries. Right? Database name was information underscore schema. This particular database, we have a table with the name column underscore extension. You scroll a little bit above, you will get some other tables as well and their data as well. This all was your data. This one, like in the product, in the table, in the database acquired, we have a table with the name products, right? And in the product table, we have 3 entries, like this one, 1, 2, and 3. We have 3 different. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. 5 columns were there with the name ID, name, price, description, and rewrite name. And this was your data from the particular table product. You can also extract the data as well. And SQL Map was the simplest tool which you can use. And in SQL Map, -- wizard, the simplest option which you can use to test for your SQL injection. Right? So you can cover up these things. You can go for this databases part. Let me just clean up this column names from here.
Okay.
Yes.
This one, you can do it for any link, and any link I can get it in the internet.
If you get this kind of parameters, like anything equals to anything. If you have any variable like simple ID equals to this one, user equals to this one, product equals to this one, for this kind of parameters. If you got in your URL, only then you can test for the injection. If you got this kind of parameters for some kind of comparison, like category equals to 1, ID equals to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, product ID equals to 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever it was. If you got this kind of comparison in your URL, we call them parameters, right? And if you got the parameters in the URL, then you can test for your SQL injection. But if you have a parameter, only then you can test for your SQL injection, right? So this was your basic for your SQL injection. If you want to read more about the SQL injection, you can just go here and test out your skills for the Port Figure Labs. Just go here and wait for a second. Just go here with the Academy part and you can search here for the SQL. Here we have around like 197 labs which you can solve for different web application security part. You can just go with the topic wise here. You can go with the lab part, but you just go with vulnerability labs and just wait for a second. This will give you result for the SQL injections. You have different scenarios here for SQL injections, right? You can try out these labs one by one. For SQL injection, we have the labs. For your cross-site scripting, we have the labs. For other things, for CSRF, we have the labs. Clickjacking, we have the labs. DOM-based vulnerabilities, CORS, XML external entities. We have multiple other labs which you can try, right? And on this particular platform, we also have some study materials which you can go through. Just go with this learning material part. Just go with view all, and we have the simple reading material, study material for all these vulnerabilities, which you can cover up here. And it's completely free. It's completely free. You don't have to pay a single penny.
So this one's here to learning for web applications, compromise, and like this, right?
Yes, exactly. But specifically for your websites and APIs as well. Application programmable interface.
Nice.
Yes. You can go and just register here yourself for the Ports Figure, and you can try out these learning materials and your labs here. We have around like 197 labs here which you can cover.